Hey everyone, welcome to the Craft Beer Professionals 2025 Spring Virtual Conference. Small Batch Standard is pumped to be the day one sponsor, and we're even more excited to help you generate more profit. Right now, today, it has never been harder to generate profit in the craft brewing industry. And here's why. If these two graphs don't paint a clear picture of what's happening in craft today, I don't know what will. In order to help you navigate this, we have put something together just for you. We call it the Small Batch Standard Profit Plays. These are excerpts from our profit playbook and include our top strategies for boosting profit at your brewery. And because you're here today, you get those plays for free. So head over to sbstandard.com/CBP to claim your copy. Thanks for being here and enjoy the talk.
All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone to Winning in Distribution, a financial blueprint to avoid the pitfalls of distribution. And look, I would be remiss if I didn't start this session off with a story from another talk I recently given. And that talk was titled Taproom Tactics of a Wildly Successful Brewery. The best part of that talk is whenever I would say more sales, the whole crowd would scream, more profit, more sales, more profit. It was hilarious. By the end, it was this wild event. Now, I wish I could motivate you in the same way with this topic, but unfortunately I can't. It just doesn't work that way. Maybe we could do this. Maybe when I say more sales today, you can reply more focus, or maybe let's just do nothing and get to the content of the talk and see what happens, what this is all about. All right. Chris Farmand, founder of Small Batch Standard. We are a financial agency for craft. We do outsourced accounting. We do tax compliance, and we do growth consulting with benchmarks that we have created for craft. I could do none of this without the help of our wonderful team. We have 26 accountants, consultants, and tax professionals that show up every single day to help breweries make more profit. So today we're going to just explore how to win in distribution. Some call this a rigged game, while others think it's just their birthright of owning a brewery. We open a brewery, we can distribute. However you view distribution, it is challenging and it is certainly a long game strategy. Think about it. How long have the big giants been around? AB, Miller Coors. All right. You don't want to talk about them? Fine. What about Lagunitas, New Belgium, Sam Adams? That doesn't land either. I understand, but we need to model after a class, an age, a genre of breweries to say they did it, so can we. The title of this presentation, Winning in Distribution, is intentional because I really think you can win in this game. There is a formula out there which very few are talking about. And we believe if executed with patience and care, it can land you in the black for your wholesale business. Back to the giants. Do you think in the 90s they had this all figured out? Absolutely not. They were trying to get craft beer in anyone's hands who would drink it. And the challenge was no one knew what craft beer was or really cared about it. So fast forward 20 years, the past decade for them has been about educating the consumer about what craft is. And during this education period, we've encountered a ton of breweries open and want to enter and play in distribution. The result has been a lot. It's just been a lot. So where are we today in 2025? We're in a period of slowdown, shrinking shelf space, distributor consolidation, and just all around junk. And just when you thought I was going down doom and gloom avenue, and we're back to winning. I really do think you can win at distribution. I do. Just so we're all on the same page. Just so we can get on the same playing field, let's define winning. Winning has three components. The first component is, can we sell a profitable product? Second component is avoiding temptation and distraction. And the third and final component is expanding brand awareness to drive consumers back to your taproom and pub. It's that simple. Winning today means profitable SKUs, avoiding temptation, and brand awareness to drive consumers back to the pub. If we can all agree on this, let's get started. All right. So before we get into it, I want to go over a couple pitfalls that we encounter when it comes to distribution. The first pitfall is the land grab, expanding too quickly. This strategy was actually cool in 2014 and 2015 when brands with really poor quality had trouble selling in their home market. Ship it to the state over, they'll never know the difference. Well, they did know the difference. And today, geographic expansion has never been more expensive, and it just doesn't work. The land grab will get you quick wins, only to realize that this is a short game strategy. And what did I say a couple slides ago? This is a long game strategy. It takes time and care and patience. Second pitfall, little to no accountability when it comes to your sales program. We aren't holding our sales reps, our directors accountable. Some examples of this are canceled meetings, excuses for lackluster sales. Oh, I forgot to record that visit recap. Accountability equals money. The more we're accountable, the more money we make, period. What about holding your distributors accountable? Well, some of you know how I feel about distributors, and we do need to hold them accountable in a respectful partnership manner, because at the end of the day, they are our partners. And with the right respectful relationship, we can actually do amazing things, right? One more thing on accountability. While most people kind of don't like accountability, they actually thrive in it. So, with this very difficult sales channel that we're trying to win at, accountability helps everyone win. Third pitfall I see is portfolio management and size. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say when the distributor asks for a 12-pack variety box, you have permission to say no. We're going to get into the numbers later, but my point here is you can make and sell whatever you want as long as you know your numbers. You can't design a portfolio and sell products based on what others want. Okay? You can say no. The fourth and final pitfall. Okay, the fourth and final pitfall is breweries not knowing their numbers. I kind of just hit on that. The remainder of this talk is going to be about numbers, so I'll be brief here. Distribution yields super thin margins. There is very little to keep at the end of the day. So one slip up in production or one delay in materials, and guess what? The profit is gone. Everything must come together for distro wholesale to work. Strategy for craft breweries should be around price, not volume. Yes, we can celebrate a chain placement, but we need to stay true to our pricing. Okay? If you remember our taproom talk, some of you have seen it, some of you haven't. We gave some quantitative and qualitative tips how to grow your business. When it comes to distribution, it's all quantitative. The margins are so thin in wholesale. We have no choice but to face the music and understand every aspect of our numbers. Only then can we make some hard decisions on which direction we go in. Okay, I'm having these conversations every single day. All right, so let's get into some benchmarks. Okay, let's get into some common benchmarks for your distribution program. All right, first up is revenue per barrel. With self-distro, we like to see about $525 per barrel when you sell in self-distro. And when working with a distributor, it's about $325. And these are the averages that we've seen over the past decade. Did you hear me correctly? Decade? Wholesale pricing really hasn't moved in a long time. Sure, your one-off triple hazies or Belgians can go for a lot higher than this per barrel, but how often are you selling this product? When we look at your stock portfolio, you're going to land somewhere in this range. Some of you may be looking at this and going, I self-distribute and I'm laughing all the way to the bank. Very few of you actually are. The $200 delta between these is quickly eaten up by your additional costs in self-distro, right? And that includes your fleet management and everything that goes along with the driving team, right? Self-distro does have an advantage of owning the account and the relationship, but not always the profit, right? So we've got to really look at all of the aspects of our self-distro program and go from there. Okay. The calculation for revenue per barrel is just over a given time, a month, a quarter, a year. You take the dollar amount sold divided by the barrels sold. All right. Let's look at the next one is labor, right? And labor is our biggest expense across all brewery ops. And in a labor analysis, we're always looking at it based on department, right? So one department's production, another department is sales, another department is tap room and admin and kitchen. But for this talk, we're just going to focus on wholesale, which is production and sales, right? So production labor should be 6 to 8% of all beer sales. That includes your tasting room, your pub, and your wholesale. Whereas the sales should be between 8 to 12% of your wholesale sales. Okay. We take these by doing our production labor and dividing it by total beer sales. And for our sales program, we look at sales labor divided by that rep's beer sales. Okay. It's very important when we look at sales reps, we can look at it as a whole, but we really need to analyze each rep and see what they're contributing to the business. And if they fall somewhere between this 8 and 12%, that's critical for the success of the overall sales program. You may be asking, what about our drivers? Drivers we lump into our production pool, our production department. I forgot to mention in the beginning, if you have questions, please jot them down in the notes. Aaron and I will get to them at the end. I should have made that announcement in the beginning. I just got too excited and went through. So questions, just jot them down. We'll get to them at the end. Next benchmark, account visits, self-distro 40 per week. If you're working with a distributor, 20 per week. And you must be thinking like, what's the difference here, dude? Why? And the question here is how are we staying top of mind? Right. And the best way to stay top of mind is through account visits and building the relationships. So for starters, breweries that self-distribute, right? The relationship's going to be strong since the rep is the person selling, maybe delivering, maybe picking up payment. They're there a lot. And we recommend 40 account visits a week. During these visits, you're selling more product, you're merchandising, you're deepening the relationship with the buyer. The one thing that I love about self is when things go wrong, you can make them right. Cans exploding, you can swap them out in 30 minutes. Something sells out on Friday night, you can have another keg on Saturday morning. It's a pretty cool arrangement if you ask me. For breweries using a distributor, it's going to be a little different, a little trickier since the distributor is handling the last mile. But that doesn't mean that the sales team cannot visit and build relationships, right? And so we cut those visits in half. And the reason we cut them in half is because, well, in this arrangement, you're really deepening the relationship with the buyer. You're spending far more time with that chain manager or that store manager or that, whatever the account location is, and you're really understanding what motivates them to hold and buy and continue to buy your product. So it's a bit of a different beast when somebody else is delivering it and you're not exactly sure if they're going to deliver. So strengthening that buyer's relationship and that decision maker's relationship is going to ensure that they put the pressure on the delivery person to deliver the beer. So just spend a little more time. All right. Next benchmark is really COGS, right? And cost of goods sold and what your COGS setup looks like. And this is the importance of this is really about just not overflowing your cost of goods sold account, your cost of goods sold section with a ton of chart of accounts, right? We get calls all the time saying, I want labor and I want utilities and I want all this stuff in COGS. And I look at someone and I say, look, hey, if you want all this, it sounds like you want to run GAAP financials, and that's fine if you want to run GAAP financials. It's not going to tell you anything. It's just you're just going to say we run GAAP financials. The point here is if you have a simplified chart of accounts and then you have benchmarks to compare them to, it all starts to make sense. Versus a super complicated chart of accounts and you're just thumbing your head going, I have GAAP financials, right? There's not going to be a whole lot of decision making there. We're trying to make decisions to generate more profit. So simple chart of accounts, keep the labor out, keep the utilities out. We're not running GAAP financials, or most of us aren't, at least. Just keep it simple. Okay. We're moving on to the next section now. Margins. In this section, we're going to cover what I call the margin siblings. See, a long time ago, Mama Margin and Daddy Margin had 3 margin children. These 3 children grew up to be very important business concepts that every owner who is producing something and selling something should know and should track and should be very comfortable with. All right, first up, the oldest child, gross margin, bigger than life, center of attention, always talking. You know that super annoying kid. Next, contribution margin. Super helpful, no talk back, no protesting, just a joy to be around. And the youngest child, net margin. Mama's favorite. Spoiled, unreasonable, and will probably rule the world one day. So it's gross margin, contribution margin, and net margin. Now, let's take a closer look at how these 3 margin kids operate within your business. All right, gross margin. I call this a fan favorite. It's super easy to calculate. Semi-useful information, but really never leaves the surface. Like I said, it's that annoying kid who talks too much, contributes some useful information. The way you calculate gross margin is it's revenue minus COGS divided by revenue. And basically what this is telling us is how much do we have left over to spend on our expenses, our general and administrative expenses. Like I said, useful, but like, what do we really do with this, right? Well, you can take a look at our benchmarks here and see that for packaged beer, our gross margin should be between 60 and 70%. And for keg beer, it's going to be 40 to 50%. Okay. I don't want to overcomplicate this one. This one is exactly what it is. You always hear people talk about your gross margin. Oh, my gross margin needs to be this, needs to be that. Well, yes, it's a starting point. It's a starting point. I'll give it some credit, but we're about to get into some really good stuff in a second here. So gross, oldest kid, Fairly easy to calc. All right. Let's talk about contribution margin now. Whew. Okay. So, middle child. This one's important. I'm going to give this one a little more credit than I did with gross. So, what contribution margin says is it's the part of the sales revenue or your sales dollars that contribute to fixed costs. Okay. So, you make beer, you sell beer, you know that beer is going to cover the revenue, the sales from that beer is going to cover your variable costs, your raw materials, your packaging, the labor to make the beer. But what about your fixed costs? What about the fixed costs that it takes to keep the facility open and all the folks paid and the internet and so on, the travel, right? We need that sales revenue to cover the fixed costs as well. So it's really covering variable costs and fixed costs and some left over, which we would call profit. However, if pricing is too low or overhead is too high and revenue only covers a small portion of your fixed costs, you may be running into a negative contribution margin. We don't want negative contribution margins, and I'll explain why in a second. So we run this analysis all the time for our customers to make sure that their SKUs are running a positive contribution margin. Okay. I know I got into the details of how to calculate the gross margin. I'm not going to get into the details. All we want to know is it's positive, right? That's our guiding star here, is that contribution margin is positive. So when we sell a wholesale product, it's paying for our variable costs. It's also contributing to fixed costs, right? All right. So let's get to net margin. Third child, youngest. By the way, kids just got off spring break. So my youngest, this is being recorded, so I'm not going to say what I almost did to him, but he's a wild one. Last one is net margin. The youngest child. What net margin says is that when everything is accounted for, when all expenses are factored in, the sale of the beer, the net margin is what is left over. It's the profit. It's what you have to keep when everything is said and done. Okay, so for some perspective here, when we look at your taproom net margin, we're looking at somewhere between 12 and 18%. After all the taproom expenses and all the expenses that are attributable to keep the taproom running are looked at, we still are keeping 12 to 18%. For distribution, self or distributor, we're at 1 to 5%. I mentioned thin margins earlier on. These are the hard and fast facts. If everything is working, we're only going to keep 1 to 5%. And if something doesn't work, that's when it's going to start to push it down to close to zero or negative. Okay. I can tell you the way that we calculate net margin, and there's no easy way about it. We go line by line through all the expenses and determine how those expenses affect your wholesale program. It's not a one size fits all. We consider every line item and how it affects it. For some, we allocate by revenue. Others, we allocate by barrels. Others, we use square footage. So it depends on the expense line item as to make sure how we do this calc. Look, folks, I cannot stress the importance of the margin siblings and incorporating them into a monthly, quarterly, or semi-annual discussion. If you have children, you just got 3 more. No kids? Congrats, now you do. Lucky for you, we have a system to help report this information in a timely manner, but we'll get more to this later, right? Jot down your questions about the margins, please, and I will be happy to address them at the end. All right. So now that I've told you about it, let's look at how these all come into play for numbers. All right. So first up is gross margin. All right. And we're looking at income minus cost of goods sold. We're doing the calculation and we are at a 40% gross margin. I think that's a little low. I believe that's a little low, but once again, here we're looking at it as an overall portfolio here versus keg versus package, but I still feel that's low. All right, now we add in our contribution items to see if we're going to run positive or negative. Okay. That includes your production labor. That includes your sales labor, benefits, distro only expenses, and some occupancy. Well, for this example, we're running a negative 11% contribution margin. You know what that means, don't you? It doesn't get any better from there. Then we have to add in all the G&A expenses to figure out what our net is. Our net margin is a negative 33%. Okay. We don't like to see negative contribution margins because we know we're only digging the hole deeper when we add the other expenses to get to net. Follow me? So we got to make sure it's positive. Now, this is looking at it as an overall like profit and loss statement, and this just doesn't do it for me, right? This doesn't do it for me. I need to see it per SKU. I need to see which of our portfolio are winners and which of our portfolios need a little bit of help. So let's take a look at this report here. We're analyzing a Hefeweizen, an IPA, Hefeweizen, and a lager. And we have, this is really confusing. Let's do it. There, that's better. That's better on my eyes. Is it better on your eyes? Great. We're looking at gross profit. We're looking at contribution margin, and we're looking at net income here. Okay. So with the 16-ounce cases of IPA, we're running a positive contribution. That's exciting. But when it comes to half barrels, we're running a negative contribution. With the Hefeweizen, both the half and the 16-ounce cases are both positive. That's awesome. With the lager, we're running a positive 16-ounce cases, but a negative half barrel. Okay. So what does this tell me? This tells me that we may have a pricing issue. We need a price increase. That would help the situation. But what it really tells me is we have an expense issue here. We have an expense issue because after we calculate our contribution margin, we have another $10 a case for the IPA, $10.37 a case. We have $12.82 for the Hefeweizen and $9.75 for the half barrel of the Hefeweizen. But oh boy, that half barrel just goes down hard when we add in our other expenses. So these numbers are speaking to me. Are they speaking to you? They should be. And so we can then begin to diagnose, where do we go to make changes? Let's look at it as a percentage here. Okay. This is looking at it as a percentages, right? I'm not even going to look at the net. That's just a bloodbath. I can't even look at that. So I'm going to look at the 16-ounce case, with the contribution margin, we're at 16.72. And the Hefeweizen, we're at 22.88. And then the half barrel, we're at 5.13. That's great. We're running positive contributions on these. That tells me the pricing is good. But boy, when we figure in our general and administrative expenses or other expenses, it's tough. It's going to be a tough business to stay in. So we use this information to make changes. We use this information to make some hard decisions. Okay. And we're helping our customers do this every single day with this data. Okay. This is speaking to me. I hope it's speaking to you. All right. Enough about margins for now. Happy to answer questions at the end about margins. Let's look at portfolio performance. All right. These days, I hear SKU rationalization. I hear focus. I hear shrinking shelf space. What a tongue twister. What does all this actually mean? These are just buzzwords. Are they true? How do they affect our brewery? How do they affect our business? If we were all in a room, I would ask you, what is the ideal portfolio size these days? How many styles should you be offering your accounts and distributors? 16, 12, 8, 4, 2. I don't know. I don't know. We'll get to that in a minute. I've been preaching portfolio focus for the past 2 years, and now we have the data to back this up. But before we get into the data, let's please talk about the 80-20 rule. All right. So, what is the 80-20 rule? This is kind of a LL. That's code word my family for a life lesson. LL. This rule says that 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. So, in my world, 80% of our revenue comes from 20% of our clients. In your world, 80% of your distro sales comes from 20% of your portfolio. Does this make sense? We run a portfolio analysis for all of our customers to see what is actually happening. And in order to do this, we run a product mix analysis just to validate our 80-20 rule. We got a report from our most recent sales by volume, ideally over a 12-month period. Anything less and you're really splitting hairs. We don't want to split hairs, right? We look at 12 months because it also scrubs out seasonality. If you have a style that has a bump in the summer, we can't rely on that to bring that in as a year round, but we can if we look at over 12 months, right? And what this rule is saying is just maybe we should focus on the 20% that's generating 80% of our revenue, right? And then we can start to say, is this 20% profitable? If it's profitable, amazing. Let's grow it. If it's not profitable, how do we get it profitable? What do we do to get it profitable? Okay. Oh, what did I do? I'm still here. All right, here we go. So check this out. For this example, we pulled 10 products. We looked at their gross profit per barrel, and we looked at percentage of sales. All right. Let's focus on products 8, 9, and 10 because they happen to be the largest part of the portfolio, but really 10, right? Number 10 is coming in at 27% of the portfolio, 24% of the portfolio, and we have a really good gross profit per barrel. The second one is our 12 packs, right? Our 12 packs. I'm not a fan of 12 packs. Craft can't price 12 packs at $15.99 a piece. They really have got to be $19.99 a piece and up, and that just doesn't land well with consumers. So I'm going to kind of push this one out the way, and I'm going to start looking at the next one and say, what can we actually do? And see, that's the thing about saying no, is these 12 packs and these variety packs can quickly sneak up to be some of your fastest sellers. But are we profitable? Are we profitable? That's the question. Okay. So I just same thing, just some more colors, easier on the eyes, right? Product 10 is good. Product 9, we got a lot of work to do on that gross profit per barrel. Product 8 probably needs a price increase and retooling of the recipe and a marketing push, right, to get it up there. And I ideally would like to see some sort of case in the top sellers. So maybe we push product 7 in there, but this 12 pack, I'm not dealing with it. It's just not happening. Okay. So this product mix analysis, portfolio analysis, 80-20 rule is critical. And guess what? What happens when we bolt this onto the margin analysis? It's incredible. I'm about to cry. The power that we can put together and the information we can put together so you can make really tough decisions. And we can help you make those decisions, okay? All right. So a couple questions. I just threw a lot at you. A couple questions. Should we continue to produce this beer in-house, or do we contract it, Chris? Look, this is a tough decision. But what I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, 2025, 2026 is about using that guy's overhead. There is someone in your market that can make the beer as good as you, cheaper than you. True story. We had a client that was making a lager and also contracting the same lager. He pushed his half barrels out because he didn't have the capacity. He had to fill the tanks with other stuff. When he was making that lager, he was losing 5% on a half barrel. We see it all the time. Half barrels are duds. When he contracted it, he was making 13% net on a half barrel. Okay. Never seen 13% in my life. This particular brewery owner, super good negotiator. Very, very strict when it comes to the numbers. Even if he was making 8%, I've never seen 8% on a half barrel net. This guy was getting a grand slam on his half barrel. So the answer is if you want to win in distro in 2025 and beyond, you may need to consider contracting a style or two. And we can figure that out once we look at the margins and we look at the portfolio. Okay. Oh, how do we fill our capacity, Rockstar? If you're telling us to contract it, how do we fill our capacity? Well, this is another hard decision. This is a really difficult decision. And I don't have the answer. First of all, you can begin brewing more variety for your tap room. If you have a 30 or 50 barrel brew house, I am sorry. I don't know what to tell you. It may mean that you look to downsize, or you look to sell some equipment, or you look to lease some space out. Okay. If you have the 30 or 50 barrel brew house, you're probably doing the contracting. So I'm confident in saying that you may need to change some things up. But look, none of this stuff's easy. But what I can tell you is continuing to sell wholesale products at a loss is not a winning formula. Right? So we take all this information, we give Chris a big hug when we see him at CBC, and we make some hard decisions. All right. Speaking of winning formula, let's get to it. I have said this 100 times. So what's more? What's one more time? The winning formula is all about focus. More specifically, portfolio focus, sales focus, and marketing focus. The days of 12 styles in distro are over. If you consider the winning brands out there, how many styles do they have in distro? Or how many do you hear about? Right? I'm in Florida. I didn't know what New Belgium was. I didn't know what New Belgium was until 7 years ago. Before that, it was just Fat Tire. That's it. Fat Tire. Yeah. If I say Cigar City, what do you think? Right? It's Highlight, right? It's one style. And yes, all of these breweries, they're making tons of beer, but guess what? When it comes to distro, it's 1 to 2 styles that they're focusing on. So let's talk about the portfolio size to get started, right? So I said this before, it's all about focus. There are a few reasons we want to focus, right? Number one, you're making an expensive product and the margins are thin. Next, shelf space is shrinking and so is the consumer. Shelf space is out of control. Our retailers are fickle and we kind of got to play in their arena. And I think it's safe to say that we really haven't identified the next gen craft drinker, which may or may not be a problem depending on who you talk to. But how do we identify what that drinker looks like, where they hang out, what sports they play, and how do we get behind a portfolio which is focused, right? When the distributor asks for new, the answer is just no, right? You can come drink it at our tap room. You can enjoy it at our pub, but that's really about it. Because if you keep saying yes, all you're doing is giving them more no cards for them to pull on you. That didn't sell quite well. We have a lot of inventory. We expected this to happen, right? All right, so here's the winning formula. And I've gotten a lot of pushback from our larger customers doing 15 to 20,000 barrels or more. They're like, you're out of your mind, Chris. The winning formula for me, if you're producing 10,000 barrels or less, is 2 styles. 2 styles, 6 SKUs, that's it. The bigger breweries will say, hey, we have a billboard of 7 styles in fill in the blank chain. If we get rid of one of those, if we go from 7 to 2, we're going to lose that space. They're not bringing anyone else in, so we can't give it up. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with that, but there are only so many breweries doing 20,000 barrels or more. It's not happening, right? So 10,000 or less, you need to start thinking about 2 styles in distribution moving forward. Second aspect of the winning formula comes to your sales team, right? Just imagine what's going to happen when you go to them and say, it's 2 styles, 6 SKUs, go. When they're used to having 8 styles or 24 SKUs. And what we're doing today is we're really asking them. We're asking them to focus and get behind the product that you want to push in distro. Okay. The winning formula for this is it's going to probably take some specialized sales training when you make this kind of shift. It's going to take some specialized sales training. And that specialized sales training primarily needs to focus on handling objections. And how do your reps handle objections and try to win a tap handle, a spot, an end cap, whatever it may be. Okay. Last, the next component is marketing, right? So we have a focused portfolio now. We know what we're selling. We have a focused sales team. They've got training and they're all fired up. Now you need the marketing behind it that of the styles you've identified. Okay. One suggestion that we give, and we're not marketing geniuses, but it really is about profiling the drinker. So, for example, if you identify that one of your styles is a drinker that's age 35 to 45, they primarily skew female, they are legal or professional service industry, and they play ultimate frisbee as a recreational activity. It's pretty specific, right? But I think that's where we need to go. So what's our next step? Let's sponsor the Ultimate Frisbee League. Let's invite the league over for specials. Let's get them to our tap room. Okay? We want to use this wholesale program winning to drive people to the tap room. All right, let's just be intentional. Let's be intentional about our marketing, okay? So now what? Oh boy, we just went through a lot. We went through a lot. And everything I went through, all the calculations they're pretty difficult. I'm going to be honest with you. This stuff is pretty difficult to calc, right? But before I let you go and before I open up the Q&A, I want to show you one chart, and the only chart that matters right now in 2025. All right. Let me just pull up all these real quick. All right. So what you're looking at here is just mind-blowing to me and really the impetus for this whole talk, right? Last year, we did a deep dive into all of our clients' financials. And the average earnings, the average profit in their wholesale division was a negative 54%. This was 70 vetted financial statements and a ton more that we pulled from to just validate this, because we were so mind blown about this. We were so just over the moon about this, that the average was a negative 54% when we looked at the whole data set. Yes, some customers were making 2 and others were losing 109%, but we're not going to talk about them. We're just going to talk about the average. Okay. And so when it comes to this, I said, we've got to do something. We have got to do something to help. And what we developed is something called the profit plays or the distribution profit plays. And this is a short list. It's a short list of plays that you can run in a matter of a week to start generating more profit in your distro program. Okay. There's no real magic bullet to win at any business, right? But this plan we've taken from our most successful, these plays we've taken from our most successful customers in order to share with you some quick changes and quick wins that you can make to start generating more profit in distro. So if you're interested in these plays, if you're interested in a copy of this talk, if you're interested in a recording, go ahead and click the QR code. I'm going to leave it up while I open up for Q&A, but click the QR code, fill out the information, and I will make sure to have the profit plays in your inbox. Marketing team's going to kill me in about an hour and a half. And then if you want, you can book a call with us and we'll walk you through the plays. It's super easy, super cool. So yeah, so the plays are just, they're great. They're great. All right. That's the end of the presentation. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we had one question from Leandro a little bit earlier. Hello, Chris. How often do you recommend reviewing your profits, weekly or monthly?
When it comes to wholesale, we're going to do it monthly. We're going to do it monthly or quarterly, right? The pricing and the expenses do not change that frequently in order for you to review it weekly. So if you're doing it monthly, you are way ahead of the curve. If you're doing it quarterly, you're doing good. If you do it semi-annually, that's good too. But there's not many people looking at this on a monthly basis, and you got to understand most of this is a numerator and a denominator, right? There's two sides of it. If you end up having a huge win on can purchases or raw materials, or you somehow are able to charge double, you got to go back to the Excel spreadsheet and be like, hey, does this work? I mean, how did this affect it? But if everything is moving, a couple cents here, a couple cents there, it's not going to have an immediate effect on the profit. But I would say if you do it monthly, outstanding. Okay. Well, I'll hang out for a little bit longer if anybody else has any questions.